I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, March the 23rd, brought to you in part by Margin Tracks by Midcon. The system you've been waiting for. You can keep an updated snapshot of your cattle margin, your hedge margin, and your net margin at your fingertips. Visit midconcattle.com for more information, or just scan the QR code on the screen. Fake protein debate, and I'm not really going to get into a debate on that because I'm by myself for one thing, and you guys know which side I'm on, but I have learned that the titles to these market reports have a little bit to do with how many views I get, so I thought that might draw a few more in. But I want you to look at these contrasting reports that have just come out in the last few days. Well, one from Interesting Engineering is where it come from online there. It's a story about Impossible Foods founder and CEO, and he says that we could be meat-free in this world by 2035. Now that kind of reminds me of what they're saying about how fast we could get to the point where we don't have internal combustion engines. Yeah, right. But says we could be meat-free, real meat-free by 2035, and says that changing the eating habits, dietary eating habits of the world away from eating real meat could have a greater impact on the good of the planet than switching to electric cars. Wow. Because, you know, out where the feedlots are out and out where the cattle are grazing, that's where all the smog's at, right? You know, the concentration of cattle, especially in the Texas Panhandle, and in southwest Kansas and eastern Colorado and places like that, the concentration of cattle would be maybe similar to the way that the car concentration is, vehicle concentration is in your big cities. And that's why you see all the smog out there in the open country, right? Well, at the same time, another report comes out, which is entitled "Rest in Peace, Plant-Based Meats." It's released by Prime Future newsletter, and it says that plant-based protein companies received $2.1 billion in investment during 2020, and the timing could not have been more perfect with you know, the inability to keep you know, a real meat on the shelves due to not being able to keep the workers on the line there in your real packing plants and things like that, and said that the timing could not have been perfect for all that big investment, $2.1 billion in the fake protein industry, and they were saying a lot of it came from your big meat packers, the ones that have been putting the screws to everybody through these black swan events, and the main one being the pandemic. They were some of the biggest investors, but $2.1 billion investment just in 2020, and it still failed, still flopped on its face. It's worse than a pyramid scheme. All the money that has been dumped in to your fake protein companies has been lost. And you know, their stock prices went to nothing, and you know, they're still touting it as you know, a revolution in the food industry, but you know, it's all been lost. Nobody wants to eat that shit. Nobody does. Even, you know, during the worst of the pandemic, when your shelves were completely bare of all your real meat, that you still saw piles and full shelves of the fake stuff. People still didn't want to eat it. We're not going to eat it. We don't want to eat it. You see some of your kind of hoity-toity pet foods are coming in, and they're kind of making fun of fake meats. You know, my dog doesn't want powdered meat and things like that. We don't want to eat it either. And I still don't understand why they have yet to change the rules on your beef checkout money to where we could promote some of those things and put up on the screen the ingredients in dog food and the ingredients in this fake meat and show that it's exactly the same. I think it would be clear, and to show how much less healthy your fake meat products are than real meat. And I'm going to stop because I know I'm preaching to the choir. But, that was just two big contrasting reports that come out within just a couple of 3 days of each other. But I think I'm going to go to where the money's at. And all that money, $2.1 billion, has pretty much all been lost. That's just for 2020. They've been dumping money in this thing for the last 8 or 10 years. But I still say we have got to figure out some way to fight against it. There are three types of fake meats, fake proteins. You got your plant-based, your fermented, which is not as widely known, and then your cell-based product, which is not being produced in economies of scale right now. So it's unaffordable. But I will say that from what I've seen and from what I've heard, I've seen presentations from people that are, very well versed in this stuff. The cell-based fake meat, fake proteins is superior in quality to what we've seen so far. So, I've seen a presentation by a professor from K-State there that is probably the guru of this stuff, and he's on the meat side. But he was explaining to us that with that cell-based product that they put out, and like I said, it's not affordable yet. It would be at some point. But he said they can make that crap taste like anything. They can make you some kind of a mash, and you can eat it, and you'll swear to God it's a pina colada. But he said that the heck of it is trying to make it taste like real meat is one of the hardest things that they could do, because as you guys know, and it's one of the things that we love about it, is real meat is inconsistent. You take one bite and you think, well, that was pretty good, and then every so often you get a bite and you think, wow, I wished I could make the whole steak taste like that. But the texture of a steak, they're talking about, Xeroxing off things that make it look like a steak and have similar. They can't replicate the texture of a steak, and when you're eating it, the texture of it. Most all these fake products, especially the meat products, are just made from some kind of a mash, and the only thing they can really get close to replicating is ground beef. So they may come in and take a certain percentage of our ground beef product, but I don't think it's going to last anytime soon. If you look at the success of the investment in those fake products. But talk about what else has been happening here. The Ukraine is getting bored with this war also. I saw that they have restarted some of their grain exports early this week. They resumed exporting corn by rail in the western part of the country. Now the seaports are closed, of course, because that's where most of the fighting's going on. But they still have 20 million metric tons of wheat and corn that they need to ship for export for the 21-22 season that ends in June. So I would say that's kind of a steep ask there to get all that pushed through. But they said they likely did it because they needed the money, and they need to get to work on this year's crops and the preparation for the next round of crops, and to get people paid. And they basically just needed the money really bad. But like I said on our last visit, I'm not sure about this war. This is the weirdest war I've ever seen. The only reason that we have armies and military is to destroy things and kill people. Well, evidently, supposedly Russia is supposed to have one of the strongest and mightiest militaries there is. Why aren't they destroying things and killing people more rampantly? if this is all just about taking that property back. I think there's more to it than that. I don't believe all the tin hat stuff either, but I don't know. It's a weird thing that's going on. I realize that people are suffering and they are destroying a great portion of that beautiful country over there. But tell you what, we need the grain that is raised in Ukraine and in Russia, and we need people to get back to work instead of throwing bombs and running from them. I mean, we've got to feed this world here, and they produce a significant amount of grain and a more significant amount of fertilizer, and of course the fuel that we need for everything else. But prayers were answered in the southern plains. I talked about it on our last visit. We did get some moisture, around the Amarillo area. And to the west, I tell you what, I went out to Lone Star Stockyards on Tuesday, and in Canyon, where I live, is just 12 miles south of Amarillo. Didn't have, just kind of a skiff of snow. It wasn't too bad at all. Amarillo Independent School District, the schools were completely closed, and if you went out to I-40 and tried to get on there, I tell you what, they had some pretty significant snow there, and it was really wet and heavy. And a godsend, and went out west of town there to Wildorado to Lone Star Stockyards, and there was some place. I saw a lot of vehicles in the ditch, jackknife trucks, and I mean it was pretty darn rough out there. But everybody was really tickled with the heavy wet snow that they got. It was really spotty. Chris Britton there, he is one of the partners in that sale barn, and he's a cattleman and is there every week. And he's from the other side of Amarillo, on the east side of Amarillo, out towards the Groom area. But if you guys have been up and down Old 66 or I-40, you remember Britain, USA, the Leaning Tower there at that old truck stop. Out there is where they farm and run cattle. And he was absolutely ecstatic and had received over 2 inches of rain on the east side of Amarillo. Now that is something. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I guess I've heard the stories that if you go off into western Oklahoma, there's some spots like that that receive some much needed rain. And boy, we're glad to get it. But whenever you start getting a little bit, it seems like it just keeps coming. When you can't get any, then you get a dry line set up, and it stays tremendously dry. But those are some interesting stories that I saw here early in the week. Let's talk about your board. On Tuesday, April live cattle futures were down 62 cents at 139.42. June down 65 at 135.70. Go on your back months of live cattle, down 12 to down 62 cents. March feeder cattle were up 22, 156.32 because the grains weren't exploding. April was down 62 cents because there's no faith and it keep them staying that way. 160.57. You go on your back months of feeder cattle and they were all down, similar to the measurements on your live cattle pits, but down 17 to down 67. Now your grains, which were not too volatile on Tuesday, but that doesn't mean that they won't hit limits on Wednesday today. But corn was down 3 1/4 cent a bushel on Tuesday to end regular trading at 7.53. Beans were up 5 1/2 cents at 16.96 1/2. Kansas City wheat up 3 1/4 cent at 11.16 1/2. Fat cattle trade was pretty much non-existent direct basis, especially in your 5-area feeding region. A few mixed bag cattle in Iowa, but just a few loads, really nothing at all. Guys are resisting it. Much of the industry thinks that we could get a little bit of market position back. We actually got a little bit back last week. It was uneven, but on Friday was the best day of trading on a live basis, and dressed also direct out in the 5-area feeding region. But guys are resisting taking less money because they know they've only got about 6 weeks before we start running into a lot more cattle that are market ready, and we'd really like to pull some cattle forward if we could. But your sale barns, Stockman's Livestock, Yankton, South Dakota, the fat cattle auction that they have there was a little bit disappointing, and I think maybe your packers are just trying to put that out as a leader there. But steady to a buck lower on conventional cattle, from 136.5 to 141 on the fed steers and heifers there through the auction ring in Yankton, South Dakota. The program drug-free non-implanted cattle sold a bit higher than that and were as high as 143.75, but that was several dollars back of what the extreme top was a week ago. Box beef cutout values continue to move mostly higher, a little bit mixed on Tuesday, but mostly for the better on your choice product. Choice cuts $259.97 Tuesday afternoon. That was up $1.47. Selects were down just 61 cents at $251.89. And like I've been telling you guys, we're going to see that choice select spread widen as orders are going in for the kind of product that consumers want to put on the grill. And you're not going to get too excited about putting a tough as boot select steak on the grill. If guys are going to go ahead and invite friends over and have a steak on the grill, they're going to go ahead and spend the money. Slaughter is not as impressive as last week. 242,000 through the first 2 days, 8,000 less than last week, 8,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. You guys remember a couple of weeks ago I was telling you about the land for sale in Texas in Gray County near Pampa there, and they only gave guys about a week to email their bids on that property in. It was probably a little bit too short notice for some people that were interested in. Well, they have indeed opened that back up. The deal didn't happen or fell through, whatever the case was, but they're going to give 30 days now to email a bid in for those that 1,076 acres more or less there near Pampa, Texas. It's roughly 800 tillable land and the balance native pasture. There would be some hunting out there. It's not a bad place in the world to be, guys. It's in the top of Texas there. There's a good well at the old home place, which really is in ruins there because a tornado come through there and pretty much wiped it out years ago, and that kind of needs cleaned up, but wouldn't be a bad place to headquarter out of there with a well right there. But there's 10 owners in this deal, and they have to look over these bids. But if you are interested in that property, you might get a buy on it, who knows. You can email johnmcdowell55@gmail.com for 30 days from right now, and get your bid in on that property, and you might get a hell of a steal. It's the only thing they're not making any more of, guys. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction based on an 800-pound steer, brought to you by Margin Tracks by Midcon, also sitting at 155.28 after trading on Tuesday, and that was down 33 cents. So you remember, it was exactly steady once we started the week after Monday sales from last week, but lost a little bit of ground as we're not getting much support from the board this week. But talking about your big sales on Tuesday, Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, 1,700 through the ring, another 1,150 through their in-house video they do with DV auction. Kind of muddy out in the country there, so that curbed receipts a little bit. Feeder steers were mostly steady to $2 higher, with some lightweight steers as much as $10 higher. Heifers run evenly steady. Imperial auction market in Imperial, Nebraska, about 2,000 head there. Didn't have a sale for a while, so can't really give you a trend there, but I will show you this automated market report through Cattle Market Central. How about 457 head of 8-weight steers in Imperial, averaged 841 pounds at 156.77 on the weighted average price. That included a load of 810-pound steers at 163.35. How about 201 head of 9-weight steers, averaged 910 pounds at 147.66 On your heifers, 266 head of 7-weight heifers, average 749 at 150.20 on the weighted average. 430 head of 8-weight heifers, averaged 861 at 137.91. How about Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota? It's the only place you'll see this report. 3,400 head of feeders there at Kimball. Steers and heifers, best tested weights for sure, $1 to $4 higher than last week, and they had a bigger offering last week. How about 610 head of 7-weight steers, average 748 pounds with a weighted average price of $171.65. 760 head of 8-weight steers, averaged 843 at 157.36. And almost 1,250 head of 9-weight steers in Kimball, South Dakota, averaged 934 with a weighted average price on all of them of $147.37. Have a few stick out individual quotes. How about Interstate Regional Stockyards near Cuba, Missouri, right there on the interstate there in southern Missouri. These were good black steers there, 71 head of them, 686 pounds, bring $179. I wouldn't be surprised if those cattle don't go to grass. How about Fredonia Livestock Auction? My friend Brad Hahn there had a good sale. Had a stick out deal of some fancy heifers there. And that come from the Kaminska cattle operation there. 90% black, fancy heifers there. And they sold in 2 big groups. 161 head, weighed 635 pound heifers at $163.75, and a little bit lighter, 157 head, 610 pound heifers, bring $165.35. At the best quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday, your Row Grow top quote for the day, come out of Kimball Livestock Exchange, 151 steers, weighed 818 pounds at $169. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.